the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, Merciful, we give Him praise and thanks for His mercy and for His goodness, and for His always seeking to straighten the lives of His creatures when they have gone astray, that He might bring them into His divine favor. We thank Him for Moses and the Torah and the Israelite prophets, for the Old Testament. We thank Him for Jesus and the gospel and the apostles that gave us the New Testament. We thank Him for Muhammad ibn Abdullah, who gave us the Quran. Peace be upon these worthy servants of Allah. As a student of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I could never thank Allah enough for His intervention in our affairs, raising up from among us one to lead, teach, and guide us back to His straight path. The one who intervened is Master Farad Muhammad, whom we believe is the great expected Mahdi, or guide, that would come to the world at the end of this present system of things. And we believe that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is that great one whom the whole world is looking for, whom the world thinks is dead, but very much alive. I'm talking about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This is a strange subject, the crucifixion of Michael Jackson. Why would we, as intelligent, believing people, put Michael Jackson in the same kind of trauma, dilemma, torture, scourging as the man Jesus? They mocked Jesus when they crucified him. They had at the top of the cross Jesus, King of the Jews. Michael Jackson, also a king, being crucified, the so-called king of pop. I see Michael much deeper than those who have talked about him. I want to talk to you today about the method that the enemy of God and the enemy of the rise of humanity is using, has used, and plans to use again to destroy leadership that will cause, first of all, black people to rise, second of all, humanity to rise. You may say, rise from what? If the scripture says that Satan deceived the whole world, are we in the world? Could it be that we too have been deceived? Well, what would the greatest deception be? It would be to deceive humanity about the one that is coming to end Satan's world. I'm going to say it again. The greatest deception would be to deceive humanity about that one that is prophesied to come to end Satan's world and bring in a kingdom wherein all human beings can find peace and security and justice. Such is the Messiah. The Jews do not believe that Jesus of 2,000 years ago was in fact the Messiah. Their theologians are more correct than the Christian theologians. The Christian theologians believe that Jesus of 2,000 years ago was, in fact, the Messiah. So the greatest deception of humanity today would be to put our minds back 2,000 years ago to blind us to the time in which we are living, when the Messiah would absolutely be present in the world. The scripture teaches God's coming is after the working of Satan, not before, but on time. When Satan's time is up, God would enter into the world to challenge Satan, upset his rule, and his presence would create war and revolution. Because it will take war and revolution to undermine Satan's power and cause Satan to cast out Satan, so that the scriptures might be fulfilled, that if Satan casts out Satan, how then can his kingdom stand? If God's coming is after the workings of Satan, how much time did God give Satan? Because we have to know the time in order to know if we are on time to expect that one. The Bible teaches from its beginning, or the Genesis, which is timed 4004 BC. That is the coming into the world of Adam and the Adamic people or race. And Adam and his world, based on rebellion to God, would have a time to rule, and that time was 6,000 years. So in the book of Revelations, it teaches us, count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man 666. A lot of wisdom in those 3 sixes, which is not our subject today, but know that we have been given the answer to that from God through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Suffice it to say, Jesus of 2,000 years ago was 2,000 years ahead of the end of Satan's time. Therefore, Jesus of 2,000 years ago could not affect the change that was in his heart to bring about. So Jesus prophesied that one was coming after him. Listen to Jesus' words. It is expedient for you that I go away. For if I go not away, the Comforter cannot come unto you. But if I go away, I will send him unto you in my name. Now, Jesus is talking not about himself. He's talking about somebody else coming in his name. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that 75% of what you read in the New Testament about Jesus is referring to a future man. And if you study the scriptures carefully, you would have to admit that many mistakes were made if it's talking about the man 2,000 years ago. For instance, Jesus said, before one generation passes, you shall see this kingdom coming. Well, 100 generations have passed. It is not that Jesus made a mistake. It is that the word that was put in the mouth of a man 2,000 years ago is correctly in the mouth of a man today. Who are you looking for? You are looking for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Caucasian to come down from heaven? Wrong. Big wrong. Mistake. Lie. Deceit. When there's a wanted poster, they try to give you an accurate description of the wanted one so that should you see him, you can notify the appropriate authorities. How could God be less than the sheriff, or God be less than law enforcement, to know that a man is coming that will end the world of Satan, that all human beings should gravitate toward, and not give us an accurate description of what that man would look like, where that man would come from, and among what people should that man come from? You say, well, what does this have to do with Michael Jackson? Just be patient. See, Jesus started his mission very narrow. You could almost say that Jesus was a nationalist. I'm sure our nationalistic brothers would be pleased to know that they did refer to Jesus at one time as a nationalist, like Moses. But Jesus was far beyond that when he said to his disciples, "Go ye not in the way of the Gentiles, or even in the way of the Samaritans, but go ye to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." That's very narrow focus. Stay away from the Gentiles. Stay away from the Samaritans. Your first assignment is to the lost sheep. Near the end of his time, he said to his disciples, "Go ye into all the world and preach this gospel to every nation, kindred, and tongue." Now, we need to find this one. The Bible kept telling us from Genesis through that he would come under the title Son of Man. This is the Bible talking. And to Muslims, I have to deal with the Bible first, because the people don't know anything about the Quran. And it wouldn't be wise for me to start with the unknown. It would be wise for me to start with the known and then shepherd the people into the unknown. Don't you think that's wise? So in the Bible, when God destroyed the wicked in the days of Noah, he says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. When he was destroying the wicked people of Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm sure you've read about that. They were guilty of something that had never been done before. The Quran says, men coming to men with lust in their hearts, as they should the female. God was not pleased with that behavior. He called it an abomination. Now, look, Look, don't call me homophobic. Please. Don't label me. I'm just quoting the book that every politician takes his oath of office on, the book. So if there's something in the book that is not right, why would you take an oath on a book that is incorrect? So if it is in the book, then at some point we're going to have to deal with the book and whether God has changed his mind over the years. Well, they say everything must change, but in the scripture God says, I am God and I change not. Why doesn't God change? Because he's all-knowing. So when he sets something down as a law, well, he sends one scripture to abrogate another. That's a change. But the basic principles of God's teachings has never changed. From the beginning to now, just as the planet still revolves and rotates at the speed of 1,037 1/3 miles per hour, and it has not changed. Maybe a hair there or a hair there. But the planet and its rotation is constant. So is the God who created it. Now, Satan colored Jesus to make Jesus look like other than the way he would appear. Sorry. You say, well, color doesn't make a difference. No, not to an intelligent person, but it must have made a difference to the wicked. Why they would make him white. Now, there's nothing wrong with his being white. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a racist. I can accept whatever color God sends his man into the world in. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was white complected. I have no problem with that. The truth of the book that he brought is sufficient for me to honor the one who brought the message. But Muhammad too was 1,400 years before the end of this system of things, and he prophesied somebody coming. And in the Islamic tradition, they say the Mahdi would come, the guide, and with him will be Jesus, the Messiah. Both of these men show up at the right time at the end of this system of things. He's called in Quran, Maliki Yawmiddin, master of the day of requital, master of the day of religion, because he comes to break up these artificial barriers between religion and make religion one. And that's why the Bible says in that day there'll be one faith, one Lord, one baptism. Hadn't happened yet, but it's on the way. Wait now, I'm going someplace. I just want you to come on with me. The Bible says that one who comes, he will have hair like lamb's wool. Look like the hair of some of these that I'm looking at. He would have skin like burnished brass. He speaks of himself. He said, I am, listen to him carefully, I am the root of Jesse, the seed of David, the bright and the morning star. Jesse was the father of David. David was the father of Solomon. Solomon said, I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem. And if he was black, David couldn't have been. And Jesse, the father of David, he was the root of the man you're looking for. David was a prototype of the Messiah. I want to get to it today. David was a shepherd boy. I often wondered when God told the prophet Samuel to go to Jesse's house because he was going to anoint one out of Jesse's family to be the next king of Israel. And when Samuel got to Jesse's house, he said, bring me your children. And he marched them in front of Samuel one by one. All of them looked beautiful, but the Spirit of God did not descend on the prophet. He said, don't you have another son somewhere? Well, that was always very interesting to me, because if a man asks you to bring your children and you bring all that you have and then you got one left out in the field tending the sheep, well, maybe he wasn't a physical son. But anyway, he said, oh, yeah. He said, I got this ruddy complexion son. He's out in the field tending the sheep. He said, well, bring him in. And boy, David came in, and the Spirit of God descended on Samuel, and he anointed that young man to be the future king. He was a musician. He played a stringed instrument. He was on the harp. And as he played his harp, he used to calm the envy of Saul. But as David fought Goliath, seemed like he didn't have no fear of the power of that heathen. When the rest of the children of Israel cowed down Little David stood up. I'll take care of this business. And he went out, picked up 5 smooth stones from a brook, but one was sufficient. He decapitated Goliath. His fame spread, making Saul even more envious. Saul even tried to kill him, but David was so respectful. He snuck up on Saul, took his spear, put it in his garment just to let him know, I could have killed you. He was a warrior. He was a musician. He was a king. He was a prophet. But the difference between him and all the prophets before him, even though he made mistakes and he committed sin according to the Bible, the Quran does not say that. I'll speak on that in a second. Yet, the Psalms represent the heart of David. When he messed up, he would fall down, talk to God, and God would forgive him. It's really beautiful. The thing that set him apart was his heart. It was a heart after the heart of God. This messianic figure is from the root of Jesse. He's the seed of David, meaning his biology is connected to David. And he calls himself the bright and the morning star. Well, when does the morning star appear? See, it appears at the darkest hour of the night, that those who are in darkness might see it and gain some hope that the presence of this bright and morning star is a signal that a new day is coming. So when James Weldon Johnson penned the so-called Negro National Anthem, the most beautiful words of any anthem that I have ever heard. Not oh say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air. See, this is an anthem of warrior people. But James Weldon Johnson, facing the rising sun, well, what direction would you be facing? You'd be facing east, wouldn't you not? Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us, what did he say? March on till victory is won. Well, what is victory? Victory is total liberation. Then Matthew writes as lightning shineth from the east, even unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. See? Not up, but eastward, this direction. This house, mosque, we call it, was a church made by the Greeks, but they made this house to face the east. They made this house to face Jerusalem. I never changed direction, because whether it's Jerusalem or Mecca, it is the holy city of Christians, Muslims, and Jews. So I keep a cross there under the crescent in gold because I respect the cross. I'm about to get to crucifixion. That cross we'll deal with. But this house is not a house that disrespects the religious paths that others take to get to God. This house, with the wisdom that comes from this house, from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, has the science to bring together all of the religions into one. And that one is the one that was with Adam in the beginning. Obey me. That's the true religion of God. Obey God. Don't set up any rival or partner. Obey God. Well, that one that was to come out of the east has come. And he came to the west, the most powerful nation of the west, North America. And he raised one from among us, as Jesus was called the first begotten of the dead. It's not that God would go to the cemetery and get some bones. You are the cemetery. Nothing on the planet deader than the black man and woman of America, more divided, more disconnected. But God would come here to raise one from your ranks. Can any good come out of Nazareth? Can any good come out of the black man in America? Hell yes, the Messiah is coming up out of the black man of America. Now, this might hurt your feelings because you don't think anything of yourself. Why would God pay attention to you? And from the womb of a black woman produce the one that the whole world is looking for. I'd like to go, before I get to Brother Michael, I want to go to the counterintelligence program of the United States government. Now, you have to understand, I want you to hear the words of J. Edgar Hoover. You see, when I thought, man, you was going to talk about the crucifixion. I told you. I told you to be patient. I want to show you Michael from another angle. He was more than an entertainer. He was more than a song and dance man. There was something divine about this brother. Oh, wait a minute. He committed sin. Well, since we're on that subject, do you know anybody that has not? Let's talk to the holy ones in the audience. Are there any of you, starting with myself, that has not done something in our life that we would be ashamed of if it became public? Talk to me. You pastors, you preachers, you cardinals, you popes, you imams, you mullahs, you sheikhs, show me one that has not committed sin. Why would anybody need the mercy and forgiveness of God if the flesh were not made to trouble the spirit? And sometimes the flesh wins out in that struggle. And even though we know right from wrong, isn't it true that we sometimes stumble? Well, all right. So I'm coming back to Jesus. I love him so much. These Jewish rabbis, they had found, this woman in adultery. I don't know how they could find her in adultery and only bring the woman to Jesus. Something is wrong with that picture. But anyway, these chauvinists, they brought the woman to Jesus. And they were about to stone her because that's the law. Stone the woman to death. And just as they were about to get on with it, Jesus knelt down in the sand and wrote, "Which one of you that is without sin cast the first stone?" All these highfalutin religious people put their stones down. Now Jesus, who was without sin, he could have stoned her. But he said, "Woman, where are your accusers?" And listen to his words, "Neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more." I'd like to speak to the press for a moment. This is a season where the press loves to find something of error in a human being and blow it up and talk about it and scandalize the person like the people behind the lens of the camera have no sin. You know, wait a minute, if you were clean, I could see you doing what you do. It seems like the media delights in finding something wrong with somebody. Now I'm getting to crucifixion. See, crucifixion in the modern Rome, America, is the modern Roman Empire. You keep looking back to ancient Rome. Ancient Rome is gone. Modern Rome is going. Now, in the meantime, in modern Rome, they have always feared that somebody would rise from among us and unify black people. And should they go to war with a foreign government, that we might join on to that foreign government and come against them. So just as it was in the time of Jesus, the prophet, and Herod, the king, they wanted to kill all boy babies. So there's a plot against the black male. And it's real, brothers and sisters. And any one of us that shows his head as a potential leader, the eyes of our enemies are on that one. Listen to me carefully, because if you show that you could be a messianic voice, then they will move to silence you. Now listen to J. Edgar Hoover's words. J. Edgar Hoover's counterintelligence program was to prevent the coalition of black nationalist groups. They invested money into keeping nationalist groups separated from each other, and even plotted to get us to kill one another. Number two, the aim was to prevent the rise of a Messiah who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement, and to prevent violence on the part of black nationalist groups. Not violence among each other, but violence against them. Listen, their aim was to prevent militant black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability by discrediting them to three separate segments of the community. 5, to prevent the long-range growth of these organizations, especially among young people. Now here's the tactics that they used. there was no black organization that was not infiltrated by agents and informers of the U.S. government to discredit and disrupt. They used dirty tricks, including the planting of false media stories, bogus leaflets, fake publications. They forged correspondence, sent anonymous letters, and made anonymous phone calls. They manipulated or strong-armed parents, employers, landlords, school officials, and others to cause trouble for the activists. And they used law. They conducted break-ins, vandalism, assaults, and beatings. The object was to frighten dissidents and disrupt their movement. Now, let's look at this thing called crucifixion and see how it's carried out. You know, crucifixion was used by the Persians, the Greeks, the Carthaginians, the Macedonians, and the Romans. It was reserved for slaves, rebels, pirates, and especially despised enemies and criminals. Crucifixion was considered a most shameful and disgraceful way to die. They would take the person, strip him of his clothes, make him carry his cross to the place of crucifixion. But it's all public. Everything is done in the public to bring about your shame, your disgrace. Follow me now. Strip you of your clothing, then they nail your hands and your feet. None of your vital organs are touched, so that you can hang there for hours and for days. Defecate on yourself, urinate on yourself, and some they would spear in the side. But Jesus, they had something special for him, according to the book. Since he was supposed to be the king of the Jews, they made a crown of thorns for him. Put it on his head. I'm coming to you in a minute. They nailed his hands, they nailed his feet, they pierced him in his side, and they let him hang there. People spat on him. Boy, this is some deep stuff. They leave you in the public, and passers-by would throw things at the crucified one. Because once you're crucified, it's like you deserve that punishment. So the people are not asking for you to come down. They are happy to see you on that cross. Now, look at the role that the media has played in the deliberate crucifixion of black leaders. I'm going to name a few, and then I want you to see how crucifixion is done. Then I'm coming to Michael and why he was crucified. Denmark Vesey. There was a plot that called for his group of slaves and free blacks to slay their owners and temporarily seize the city of Charleston, South Carolina. They planned to sail to Haiti to escape retaliation because they were impressed with the revolution that took place in Haiti with Toussaint Louverture and Dessalines. Two slaves opposed to Vesey's scheme leaked the plot. See, there's always a Negro somewhere to tell massa what the slaves were planning for their freedom. Charleston authorities charged 131 men with conspiracy. 67 men were convicted and 35 hanged, including Denmark Vesey. But the worst of those was Nat Turner. Now, Nat Turner was our first great military leader. He was a preacher, but he understood aspects of the Bible that preachers today don't seem to want to preach anymore. But his 1831 insurgency in Virginia numbered more than 70 enslaved and free blacks. Approximately 60 white men, women, and children were killed before Turner was defeated. In retaliation, the white militia killed at least 200 blacks and probably many more. Hysteria arose about armies of slaves rising up, and it led to the slaughter of many blacks all over the South under circumstances of great barbarity. Well, they severed the heads of those that they captured, and their heads were mounted on poles at crossroads as a grisly form of intimidation. 48 blacks were tried on charges of conspiracy, insurrection, and treason. 55 were executed, many more were banished, and a few were acquitted. Nat Turner eluded capture for months before he was arrested. He was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death. He was hanged on November the 11th, 1831, in Jerusalem, Virginia. Now let's become more modern. How many of you have heard of W.E.B. Du Bois? He was a great scholar among us. Du Bois started as a staunch integrationist, like many of us. But later, he echoed a very Garveyite philosophy. W.E.B. Du Bois, that talked about the talented tenth and opposed Booker T. Washington, was also an opponent of Marcus Garvey. He talked about large numbers of American Negroes who in all essential particulars conceived themselves as belonging to the white race. Ooh. Did this bother any of you? Did it touch any of you? He said, such Negroes were ever ready, quote, to flock to white America before they would flock to the brown West Indies or to black Africa or yellow Asia. Blacks, he now thought, should begin to concentrate upon this problem, their economic survival. You know, Du Bois was one of the founders of the NAACP, but the NAACP in its original founding, it was to fight for civil rights, but not economic power among black people. You know that, right? So E.B. Du Bois, once they found that he was growing into this kind of mind and began to write in the Crisis magazine some of his thinking, which I, as a baby, was reading the Crisis magazine by an more enlightened W.E.B. Du Bois, and he began to fuel my fire. Then the whites in the NAACP questioned his emotional stability and his capacity for cooperation. They were suspicious of his motives and called him a danger. They took away his passport. And they literally made black people begin to look at W.E.B. Du Bois with a negative view. W.E.B. Du Bois today is admired by any of us with an ounce of intelligence. When you read this man's growth and development, Garvey died in London. E.B. Du Bois died in Africa, and his body is interred in Ghana. He died developing the history of Africa and African civilization so that our children would read of themselves not as slaves on some master's plantation, but see the greatness of yourself. And because he dared to teach us the greatness of ourselves, he suffered crucifixion. But the worst of it all, until modern times, was done to Paul Robeson. How many of you heard of Paul Robeson? Paul Robeson was a scholar. He was an athlete. He was an actor. He was a singer. And he was loved outside of America, in Europe, and particularly in Russia. Listen. In 1919, J. Edgar Hoover worked on trying to frame Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey headed the largest independent black organization in the world. And as Garvey grew, they became frightened because Garvey wanted to connect black people in America to black people in Africa. And that to them was dangerous, so what did they do? They framed him. They arrested him, sentenced him to 5 years in prison. His sentence was commuted, and he was deported in 1927, but Hoover went on to FBI glory because he got rid of Marcus Garvey and the United Negro Improvement Association. Paul Robeson, at the height of his fame, he was an entertainer and activist. He began speaking out against fascism and racism in the United States and abroad. Robeson became a prime target of the United States government during the late 1940s through the late 1950s. His passport was revoked from 1950 to 1958, and he was under surveillance by the FBI and the CIA and by the British MI5 for well over 3 decades until his death in 1976. They hated him for his beliefs in socialism and friendship with the Soviet peoples, and for his efforts to push for anti-lynching legislation. To this day, Paul Robeson's FBI file is one of the largest of any entertainer ever investigated by U.S. intelligence. According to files released under the Freedom of Information Act, Robeson was drugged and neutralized under the CIA's Nazi-inspired MK Ultra mind control program and subjected to abusive levels of electric shocks while in Great Britain as a means to keep him from influencing the U.S. civil rights movement and worldwide anti-imperialist movement during the 1960s. Now look, they focused on black entertainers because black entertainers had money. At that time, blacks were not in the major leagues, just coming into baseball, just coming into football. So black sports people didn't have the money that black entertainers had. Sammy Davis, Mahalia Jackson, Dick Gregory, Eartha Kitt, Nina Simone, of course, Burt Lancaster, Frank Sinatra, Harry Belafonte, Tony Bennett, Bill Cosby, Diane Carroll, Count Basie, Sidney Poitier, and many others. These were black people and white people who wanted to see black people free. These black people donated their money to movements. And these were some of the strong supporters of Martin Luther King, and we'll get to his crucifixion in just a minute. Now, the prophecy says that any one of us who could connect us to the outside world was deemed a major threat. Garvey, Du Bois, Malcolm, Martin, Elijah Muhammad. Now, do you think that Marcus Garvey was a small-time leader who didn't think about preparing future leaders? Do you think Martin King was like that? These were intelligent black men who knew their mortality. And they knew that if movement was going to continue, they would have to prepare a new cadre of leadership. So here's how crucifixion goes. They nail your hands, they nail your feet. They strip you of your followers by propaganda. They break your legs so that after you are dead, there's no support for your ideas. It's not the man as much as it is the ideas of that man, so they must not only kill the man, they have to kill his idea so that a generation won't come up after him fueled by his ideas. Are you with me? There's Malcolm. There's Martin. There's Kwame Ture. Stokely Carmichael, his former name. Is the Panther Party. Now they even started spying on the NAACP because they couldn't trust that among the NAACP leadership somebody wouldn't come up with ideas that whites who pay money to it would not be have an objection to. So they watched all black organizations. Now, who is the they? Who is the they? Now, some of you like to refer to me as anti-Semitic. I hate that you would say that in the face of many of those who call me anti-Semitic. They're very definitely anti-black. Now, there are certain members of the Zionist faction of Jews that have always wanted to control the means by which your crucifixion could take place. You notice how everyone that got crucified got first crucified in the media. The media is used to demagnetize the person who has attracted large crowds. So to demagnetize you means to make you now unattractive to the people that once were attracted to you. I'm sorry, I have to tell it. There were members of the Jewish community that helped to start the NAACP, but they were watchmen over how that organization developed to keep it in a certain line. This is anti-black. As long as Martin Luther King was talking about black and white together and forgiveness and all of that, he was the darling of the civil rights movement. Malcolm, on the other hand, was like the real radical, and Martin Luther King loved, Malcolm hated. Malcolm was supposed to be the biggest anti-Semite of his day. You didn't hear me. Well, let me say it again. Now, as Martin started changing, see, that's what you have to understand about all of you who lead. As long as you don't change in your relationship to the powers, you can continue. But the moment they see change in you, then they have to destroy you so that you will never be a strong leader for your people. When Martin Luther King began speaking against the war, that's when all hell broke loose. The black preachers turned on Martin King. They say, "You're making it hard for us, Martin, because your social gospel is interfering with us and our relationship with our former slave masters and their children." So they turned on Martin The FBI called Martin Luther King a notorious liar. They started monitoring his hotel rooms, his offices, and they sent tapes to his wife of some affairs that he had, as though an affair will make a man less than a warrior for God and the liberation of the people. When they saw in February of 1968 Martin Luther King Jr. sitting with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they saw the two men from Georgia meeting the greatest orator of our time and the most brilliant prophetic voice of our time. One of these had to die. To kill Elijah would have meant revolution. But when they killed Martin, revolution broke out in 100 cities in America. I'm talking about the U.S. government and the plots that they enact against black politicians that they're losing control over. They'll come with some fake stuff offering you this, but there's a camera. So that you will lose confidence in your black leadership, who are only following the path of their white predecessors. Now, Elijah Muhammad, the FBI did everything they could to destroy him, to destroy the Nation of Islam. And they thought the nation would never rise again. Who is Michael Jackson in all of this? Michael Jackson, the seventh of 9 children, was born to a devout Jehovah's Witness mother. His father, Joseph, a steel mill worker who performed with an R&B band called the Falcons. Well, the boys didn't form the Jackson 5. Joe Jackson formed the Jackson 5. There's something about Joe Jackson that we have to understand. Most of us have children and we have no purpose for them. So they grow up without a name, without a purpose, and we just hope that they'll turn out all right. Joe Jackson had a purpose for his children. And at 5 years old, the Jackson 5 became national hit. Their first 4 singles I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There went to #1. The Jackson 5 were born. When I talked with Brother Michael, as I will chronicle now, he said to me, Farrakhan, I didn't have a childhood. I would have liked to have sleepovers and pillow fights and all the things that children did. But I was performing since I was 5 years old. That's why Michael found so much joy with the young lady, Brooke Shields. And when he met with Shirley Temple Black, they both sat down and cried together because Shirley Temple Black was a childhood star that I remember when I was a little boy. And they, when you're gifted like that, you don't have a childhood because somebody's pushing you. And through pushing the gifted ones, the parents and others can become wealthy. I told Michael, I said, Michael, in the world of wisdom, we don't have time for foolishness. In the world of wisdom, you plan for your baby when you know you've conceived. And even before that, when you get down on your knees, mother, black, brown, red, yellow, or white, when you know you are expecting, then the person that wants to make a great child, they go down on their knees and they vow what is in their womb to God. Listen, as this new life is being formed in the womb, it has eyes, but it cannot see, but ears, it can hear. It hears its mother's heartbeat. It knows its mother's voice. It hears what goes on in the environment around it. So a pregnant woman is so precious that you must never expose a pregnant woman to things that would damage that which is growing in her womb. Some people play voices to their child. Some play music to their child. And even though the Quran says when the child is born into the world, it knows nothing, but it has an inclination coming from that womb. The woman is sacred. And it's so sad that we as men don't realize how sacred the womb of the female is. That you make the prophets, you make the kings, you make the rulers, you make the demons. They all come from your womb. Michael Jackson's mother was a praying mother. That young boy was born into the world for a purpose and with a destiny bigger than music. We know him. My children knew him from the time he was 10 and came to public attention. My children grew up watching Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5, and when they had the little, what do you call it, child shows, you know, what, cartoon of the Michael Jackson and the Jacksons. My children would stay at the TV. They knew all his songs by heart. And we watched him grow. I wish they had the screen so I could show you his growth. At 10, he was black, with a black face, kinky hair, broad nose, thick lips. Somebody told Michael he was ugly. Somebody told my brother he wasn't good looking. Somebody told you the same thing. So you begin to hate the way God made you, but you don't have no money to fix it. So as Brother Michael began to get a little money, he began to try and fix things. Well, I read something. He had about 6 nose jobs. He had a lot of stuff done. He had money, and he was working on himself. I had a conversation with brother. He said to me, he said, "Minister, they always made us see black people as ugly people in the jungles of Africa." Listen to his words to me. He said, "But then I began to study, and I saw that some of these great Egyptian pharaohs, they were beautiful people." He said, "And so I went," he said, "to my friend Spielberg and David Geffen and others, and I asked them, would they help me to produce a movie on the lives of Africans to show black people how really beautiful we are and were." He said they turned him down, and he said he decided he would do it himself. It was Hollywood whose first movie. What was the first movie? The Birth of a Nation. How did it portray us? And how has Hollywood portrayed us? And who were the Hollywood moguls that portrayed us like that? Am I anti-Semitic, or are they anti-black? They know our history, and they wanted to keep our history from us so that we would never be inspired to rise above what they had portrayed us as. I didn't write no book called Little Black Sambo. Somebody wrote it for me to read. I'm not anti-Semitic, but they were anti-black. As Michael grew, he began to change. He fixed his nose, he fixed his chin, he took some of the fat out of his jaws, and later on, he contacted this skin disease called vitiligo. They say it first appeared on his hand, and that's why he started wearing the glove. But as you know, vitiligo, it takes away your pigment. And you'll have one part of you very light, almost like an albino, and the other part is natural. Michael, being before the public, he didn't want to be spotted, so he went to dermatologists who sped up the process. So Michael went from black at 10 years old to white in his 40s. They say when he died, his body was chalk white. He was bald from the burn in his hair, so he wore a wig. And they say that the pain that he suffered from that burn is what started him on the pain medication. When Michael had Johnny Cochran as his attorney, I was in Los Angeles, staying at the home of the health guru, Dr. Torrey. And Johnny Cochran called me, and he said, I need you to talk to Michael. He's really going through something. Well, I didn't know what Michael was going through. This was my first conversation with Michael. It was in the 80s. And when I talked to Brother Michael, he was in deep depression. And I said, Michael, out of our pain came our creative genius. I said, if it were not for the pain of slavery, we wouldn't have spirituals, nor would we have blues or gospel. All of it came from our pain. That great gospel song that Martin Luther King wanted to hear the night before he was killed, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, was written by a Chicago brother who had just lost his wife. And in losing his wife, he went into the room, and his pain brought out that magnificent song. I said, let your pain, Michael, serve your creative genius. That's all I said. After that, Michael came out with the album called History. Now listen, it's serious. Because I didn't know what was giving him pain or who. But when he made that history, he starts talking about the pains. history. How many victims must there be slaughtered in vain across the land? And how many struggles must there be before we choose to live the prophet's plan? Every day, create your history. Every path you take, you're leaving your legacy. Every soldier dies in his glory. Every legend tells of conquest and liberty. Don't let no one get you down. Keep moving on higher ground. Keep flying until you're the king of the hill. No force of nature can break your will to self-motivate. She say this face that you see is destined for history. Then he wrote, they don't care about us. They don't care about us. They who? See, he's sending his people messages out of his pain. They don't care. And some of you are dumb enough to think because we have a black president that they now care. If it does not get better for the least of us, then somebody still doesn't care about us. Skinhead, deadhead. Everybody gone mad. Situation, aggravation. Everybody allegation. In the suite, on the news. Everybody dog food. Bang, bang, shot dead. Everybody's gone mad. All I want to say is that they don't really care about us. Beat me, hate me, you can never break me, will me, thrill me, you can never kill me, Jew me, sue me, everybody do me, kick me, kite me, don't you black or white me. That's what Michael was talking about. They made him go back in the studio and change those words. And Michael was labeled anti-Semitic. Tell me what has become of my life. I have a wife and 2 children who love me. I am the victim of police brutality. Now I'm tired of being the victim of hate. You're raping me of my pride. Oh, for God's sake, I look to heaven to fulfill its prophecy and set me free. Skinhead, deadhead, everybody gone bad. Trepidation, speculation, everybody allegation. In the suite, on the news, everybody dog food, black man, black male, throw your brother in jail. All I want to say is that they don't really care about us. Tell me, what has become of my rights? Am I invisible because you ignore me? Your proclamation promised me liberty. Now I'm tired of being the victim of shame. They're throwing me in a class with a bad name. I can't believe this is the land from which I came. You know, I really do hate to say it. The government don't want to see. But if Roosevelt was living, he wouldn't let this be. No, no. Skinhead, deadhead, everybody gone bad. Situation, speculation, everybody litigation. Beat me, bash me, but you can never trash me. Hit me, kick me, you can never get me. All I want to say is They don't really care. What you don't know is when one of us becomes famous, they watch us closely. Do you remember Different Strokes? Do you remember the little brother called Todd Bridges? I was in the home of Jim Brown, probably one of the greatest football players that ever played the game, and Todd Bridges was there. And he came to me and said, Farrakhan, I was going to change my name to an African name, and the FBI came and visited me and warned me that I should not do that or else. Why is his desire to change his name a problem for the U.S. government? It's because all of you wear the names of your former slave masters. And as long as you're in the name of your former slave master, you are not yet free. You got to get out of his name and come into the name of God, which you rightly deserve. Michael then was on his way to the cross because Michael had touched the hearts of people all over the world. Michael touched the hearts of every race, every culture, every ethnic group, every tribe. There was nothing that Michael hadn't touched, and now he's becoming dangerous. Dangerous. Didn't he write some song called Dangerous? He was telling us he had become dangerous. Dangerous to who? To those who want to keep you ignorant of who you are so they can continue to use us as tools and slaves. It's not about hate. This is not about anti-Semitism. It's about showing who is anti-black. I didn't know what was in Michael's heart, but I told Michael, don't be angry with your father, because even though you didn't have pillow fights and sleepovers, those that had pillow fights and sleepovers and had a childhood, they're the ones that's buying your records, and they're the ones that's coming to see you. You had a purpose for your life. You didn't know that Michael was a lecturer. I was surprised when I read Michael's lecture at Oxford University in England. See, Michael was much more than a man of song and dance. Michael was a heart that beat for the love of humanity. This is part of Michael Jackson's speech at Oxford. It's titled, "Heal the Kids." It gives a view of MJ's philosophy and worldview better than any other source. And this is what Michael said at Oxford. Love, ladies and gentlemen, is the human family's most precious legacy, its richest bequest, its golden inheritance. And it is a treasure that is handed down from one generation to another. Previous ages may not have had the wealth we enjoy. Their houses may have lacked electricity, and they squeezed their many children into small homes without central heating. But those homes had no darkness, nor were they cold. They were lit bright with the glow of love, and they were warmed snugly by the very heat of the human heart. Parents, undistracted by the lust for luxury and status, accorded their children primacy in their lives. On the world condition, this is what Brother said. Friends, let me paint a picture for you. Here's a typical day in America. 6 youths under the age of 20 will commit suicide. 12 children under the age of 20 will die from firearms. Remember, this is a day, not a year. 399 children will be arrested for drug abuse. 1,352 babies will be born to teen mothers. This is happening in one of the richest, most developed countries in the history of the world. Here is Michael's goals. He said, our goal is simple: to recreate the parent-child bond, to renew its promise and light the way forward for all the beautiful children who are destined one day to walk this earth. They say that parenting is like dancing. You take one step, your child takes another. I have discovered that getting parents to rededicate themselves to their children is only half the story. The other half is preparing the children to re-accept their parents. Then he started talking about his father. He said he was talking about his father's father. He showed very little affection toward his family and raised my father and his siblings with an iron fist. Who could have imagined what it was like to grow up a poor black man in the South, robbed of dignity, bereft of hope, struggling to become a man in a world that saw my father as subordinate? I was the first black artist to be played on MTV, and I remember how big a deal it was even then, and that was in the 80s. My father moved to Indiana and had a large family of his own, working long hours in the steel mills, work that kills the lungs and humbles the spirit, all to support his family. Is it any wonder that he found it difficult to expose his feelings? Is it any mystery that he hardened his heart, that he raised the emotional ramparts? And most of all, is it any wonder why he pushed his sons so hard to succeed as performers so that they could be saved from what he knew to be a life of indignity and poverty? I have begun to see that even my father's harshness was a kind of love, an imperfect love, be sure, but it was love nonetheless. He pushed me because he loved me, because he wanted no man to ever look down on his offspring. And now, with time, rather than bitterness, I feel blessing. In the place of anger, I have found absolution. And in the place of revenge, I have found reconciliation. And my initial fury has slowly given way to forgiveness. And that's what I'm asking all of us to do tonight. Live up to the 5th of the 10 Commandments. Honor your parents by not judging them. Give them the benefit of the doubt. That is why I want to forgive my father and to stop judging him. I want to forgive my father because I want a father, and this is the only one that I've got. I want the weight of my past lifted from my shoulders, and I want to be free to step into a new relationship with my father for the rest of my life, unhindered by the goblins of the past. In a world filled with hate, we must still dare to hope. In a world filled with anger, we must still dare to comfort. In a world filled with despair, we must still dare to dream. And in a world filled with distrust, we must still dare to believe. Michael Jackson. I'm almost finished. Can you be patient with me a little bit? I love this brother. And I feel a deep sense of personal loss. We had a quiet relationship. And he would call me on New Year's Day to wish me well and send me big bouquet of fruit in a huge bowl. And when we would close, I would say, "I love you, Michael." He said, "I love you more." And Michael wanted to fight the powers that were controlling him and trying to steal his legacy. Michael was a wise young man. When he bought for $35 million, I think it was, the master recordings of his own music and half of a 750,000 song catalog that includes music by the Beatles, Elvis Presley, Bob Dylan, the Staple Singers, Neil Diamond, and the Jonas Brothers. That means anytime they play any of those songs, he gets paid. That catalog that he had is worth more than $1 billion. And naturally, see, what you don't understand about the enemy, when they fear you, the first thing they must do is destroy your reputation, then destroy your wealth. And if you're still alive, we can have him then. Because he's no more, has no more money, he's a broken man, you can have him now. Look, Michael owned Little Richard's catalog. And according to Our great brother Dick Gregory, he said when Michael brought the rights to Little Richard, the architect of rock and roll, Michael returned to Little Richard the rights to his music free of charge. Now, I would like to tell you about Michael Jackson's money. See, knowing something about him just before he died, his final concert tour called This Is It. If you watch the short video of his talk and then what he was singing, Michael said, "This is it." This was to be the end for him as a performer. Michael has written over 200 songs that have never been recorded. Michael, I watched him, you know, and the wise of the enemy, they watch him too. Michael said, "This is it." I don't know what that means to you. But I know what it meant to me. And the enemy watching knows what it meant too. When he raised his fist, see, what you don't know, Michael is a warrior. And when he raised his fist, he was telling all the would-be's and the wanna-be's, my crown is like Michael Jordan's jersey. Nobody can wear my number when I finish. You hang it up, you put my crown on the shelf, because it's the unreachable star. It's the unattainable goal. But I'm going to show the world that I am Michael Jackson, and I'm fighting for my legacy. This is it. And then when you watched him on the stage, see, he's in a militant. Looked like an FOI, you know. They didn't tell you what he was singing, but in the end, if you looked at his mouth, he said, "They don't care about us." Now, Peter King, the congressman from New York, just listen to what this criminal said. He's a circumcised heathen. You know, Farrakhan is ready to throw down. I don't give a damn what the world think about me. All you weak, spineless Negroes, go hide in the back, because it's time now. The Messiah's voice must be heard. Representative King, hang in there with me. He said, for the last, I don't know how long now, this lowlife, Michael Jackson, his name, his face, his picture is all over the newspapers, television, radio. All we hear about is Michael Jackson. Upset. He said, let's knock out the psychobabble. This guy was a pervert. He was a child molester. He was a pedophile. And to be giving this much coverage to him day in and day out, what does it say about us and our country? We don't need Michael Jackson. Yeah, he died. He had some talent. Fine. People are dying every day. Men and women are dying in Afghanistan. Let's give them the credit they deserve. Yeah, and they're there on the basis of some BS by your former president and the government of the United States. They are there to die for nothing. They can't win. I said to President Obama, this is now your war. And the best thing you can do is find the quickest way to get out of there, because there will be no victory in Afghanistan for America or her allies. Now, was Michael Jackson a pervert? Was Michael Jackson a pedophile? Let's see. Let's see. Now, it doesn't seem to make any difference if you win in court. Now, the only time that he went to court on these charges, he won. It's like poor OJ. He won in court. He didn't kill nobody. We're going to try him again. Well, he didn't kill, but he was responsible. I'm going to put that right back on white folks. The present generation of white people are not guilty of the crimes that were committed against black people. But you have benefited from the crimes of those that went before you, that put you in your privileged position. So now you have to accept responsibility to help clean up the mess that your fathers made, or else. I'm not talking for me. I'm speaking the will of the God that has me before you. Now, it was mentioned that the former accuser of Michael in 1993, Jordan Chandler, had retracted his claim and now says that his father pushed him to do it. Well, I had my research people check it out, because I don't want to be guilty of any false statement. And according to Snopes.com, a website that tracks down the veracity of internet reports and rumors, this report is not true. However, there is a transcript of a phone call made by the boy's father that makes the boy's claims highly suspicious. On July 2nd, 1993, in a private telephone conversation, Evan Chandler was tape recorded as saying, quote, "There was no reason why he, Jackson, had to stop calling me. I picked the nastiest SOB I could find." Evan Chandler's lawyer, Barry Rothman. All he wants to do is get this out in the public as fast as he can, as big as he can, and humiliate as many people as he can. He's nasty, he's mean, he's smart, and he's hungry for publicity. Everything's going to a certain plan that isn't just mine. Once I make that phone call, this guy is going to destroy everybody in sight in any devious, nasty, cruel way that he can do it. I've given him full authority to do that. Jackson is an evil guy. He's worse than that, and I have the evidence to prove it. If I go through with this, I win big time. There's no way I lose. I will get everything I want, and they will be destroyed forever. Michael's career will be over. And in the same conversation, when asked how this would affect his son, Mr. Chandler replied, quote, "That's irrelevant to me. It will be a massacre if I don't get what I want." It's going to be bigger than all of us put together. This man, Jackson, is going to be humiliated beyond belief. He will not sell one more record. The recorded conversation was a critical aspect of Jackson's defense against the upcoming allegation made against him. He and his supporters argue that he was the victim of a jealous father whose only goal was to extort money from the singer. Now, what you gonna do to Michael? You're gonna strip him. You're gonna destroy him. You're gonna make sure that he'll never sell another record. You're gonna destroy his career. This isn't just me, the father, talking. It's a conspiracy. This is the crucifixion. You saw Michael's color going from black to white. That's the outside journey. But the inside journey, Michael was going from white to black. Now watch. Michael started helping Africa. He met with Nelson Mandela. He gave lots of money to African charities. He wanted to build on the African continent. Danger, danger. Michael supported 39 charities, donated millions of dollars to important causes through his foundation. Now, whether you know it or not, these are his achievements. The Millennium issue of the Guinness Book of Records names Michael as the pop star who supports the most charity organizations. It is estimated that Michael has given over $300 million to charity. His many charitable acts includes multiple visits to hospitals, orphanages, terminally ill children. He paid for funerals of underprivileged and victims of disasters, brought thousands to visit Neverland free, paying for a liver transplant. He gave to childhood diabetes research, mother-to-child HIV transmission in Africa, drug abuse, immunization, leukemia, cancer research, hemophilia, AIDS, juvenile diabetes. This man donated to the Michael Jackson Burn Center, the Heal the World Foundation, and I could name all of the groups that Michael supported. And when we were doing the Million Man March, I met with Brother Michael in a hotel suite in New York, and I said, Brother Michael, it's one thing if 1 million women and girls cheer for you, but when 1 million men cheer you, that's significant. I said, Michael, what I would like for you to do is to come to the Million Man March and sing the song, I'm looking at the man in the mirror. Michael was all for it, but after we left, somebody persuaded him differently. But Michael gave $100,000 to the Million Man March. Michael Jackson, in his fight against the record companies, I met with him in Florida, and he and I had a private dinner, and I told him that I was going to the National Press Club and that I was going to talk to the world about the neoconservatives, most of whom are Zionists, and their program for a new American century, where they were advising the government, and Bush in particular, and the policies that were made during the Bush administration were all out of this project for a new American century by the neoconservatives. I said, Michael, I'm going to step out and call attention to this to the world. He said, you would do that, Minister? I said, yes. I said, I'm doing it because I want you to see that if you stand up in the name of God, you will be the winner. I want you to see that when I step up and call them out, I'll be around. And I'm around. And I'm around. And I'm alive. And I'm getting stronger by the day. God has kept me alive because there's more work for me to do. I won't tell you the rest. But I got a call, I think 7 days before he passed away. It was from a lawyer whose name I won't call, who said, "Farrakhan, please get in touch with Michael. He's in serious trouble." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Michael agreed to do 10 concerts. Now they've booked him for 50. And we're afraid that he won't be able to fulfill the obligation, and he will be sued, and this will be a way for them to take his legacy, the catalog that he owns." I said, "Well, what do you want me to do? He hasn't called me." He said, "But there are people close to him that are followers." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, give me a few days. Let me think about it." I went to Africa, and the first day that I arrived in Africa, we were sitting at the table having dinner, and a text message came to Rock Newman that Michael had had cardiac arrest. I hit the table and I said, "My brother is gone." 15 minutes later, we got another text message saying that Michael Jackson was dead. I was invited to his memorial, not to say anything. I guess it would have been too much. But the same people that controlled his final concert appearances were the persons who put together the beautiful memorial that we saw. And it was a beautiful memorial for our brother. I was so proud of all of those who had anything to say, anything to play, or anything to sing. And I was very proud of our brother, the Reverend Al Sharpton, and the beautiful words that he spoke. CNN kept calling me because they knew I was there, so they wanted me to say something. But when we were to go up to speak to CNN, we had to have certain credentials and they weren't available. So I said, "Look, let's go." Of course, I have to tell you that I was in good company. I mean, I was surrounded by stars and stars and more stars. And my light was not dimmed in their presence. At the repast, I talked to his family and encouraged them. I believe that the best place for Michael Jackson's body, I still think he owns half of Neverland, is for a beautiful mausoleum to be built at Neverland. And all of the rides that some of the FOI enjoyed when we were at Neverland, while I and Michael were having long talks, the brothers were in the bumper cars. I realized, too, that most of us didn't have a childhood either. Because the brothers were really having a great time. But I think that Neverland would be a beautiful place if it were returned to the way Michael envisioned it. And people would come and pay their respect to this fallen hero. Now I shall close. I called Michael the archangel of sound, song, and dance, because Michael's sound touched people of every race, culture, ethnicity, persuasion, religious, political, sexual orientation. Michael touched it all. I used the term Michael, the archangel, because an angel is a person of tremendous height, lofty, not in stature, but lofty in the way he moves. Angels, they're among you, but you can't see them. I gave a 37-minute interview with CNN about Michael. Poor Don Lemon. He couldn't get the people to put it on except a few words, weak, that were not the context, you know. I'm going to tell you what they were afraid of. Because I mentioned Michael as a messianic voice. I want you to hear this. If you notice, all human beings that are born make a universal sound. Don't care whether you're white, you're black, you're rich, you're poor, any ethnicity, tribal origin. All babies come into this world making the same sound. They cry. At the end of life, all human beings die making the same universal sound. It's only between life and death that the sound becomes confused. And it's like the Tower of Babel, because we have so many religions, so many ethnicities, so many nations, so many flags, so many tribes, so many ideologies, and we're all confused with each other. The universal sound coming in, the universal sound going out. Question: when will there be a universal sound during the time of our lives? You remember when I was talking about Brother Barack when he was just a senator? I noticed how he was gathering people from every hue, every color, every race, every ethnicity around him, and when you watched, as I did, you could see oneness in the people surrounding Brother Barack. That told me that he was a messianic voice. See, these are like heralds. You know what a herald is? When the king is coming, somebody, excuse me. Barack made a sound that people all over the world were attracted to. Talk to me. There's never been a president that America has produced that has garnered so much sympathy, empathy, hope in the human family as has happened with Barack Obama. Well, he has an African father and a white mother, but I think when you hear the way he spoke over Skip Gates, he had to cool it, you know what I mean? His black start coming out. You know? He had to pull that fella back in. But it shows you that underneath all his brilliance, his magnificence, he's one of the brothers. He's one of the brothers. But if you look at Michael, Michael made a sound. In his songs, he didn't have the greatest vocal instrument, but what he got from words. You know, each word is like an atom. The energy of that word is bound up in the word, but it takes the right spirit connecting to that word to explode the word, and the energy of the word comes across and you feel it. See, a lot of people are orators. That ain't where it's at. But the spirit, see, Michael had an anointed spirit. So did Barack. Now watch. Michael explodes words. So at 10 years old, they say, how could this boy, 10 years old, talk about a life experience that I know he didn't experience? And you could feel Michael when he told them to beat it. When he said, you know, that baby ain't mine. Something like that, I don't know. Gone too soon? You could feel Michael. His sound, as the Bible puts it, his sound went throughout the earth. Michael had a sound